So the internet is probably about a 92% penetration in North America, give or take. But in other places around the world, it's about 47%. So we talk about cash going away, but it won't go away until you have tremendous, until there's internet everywhere for digital money. But certainly in Norway, places where it's everywhere, it may happen sooner. But the power of Bitcoin, the power of Lightning Network will follow the adoption curve of the internet itself, because it is an extension and continuation of the revolution of the internet. And as there's more and more adoption of the internet through places around the world that need it, they're going to gravitate towards Bitcoin and hard money.
Welcome to Bitcoin Basics with your hosts Faris and Gordon. Visit bitcoinbasics.help if you need help buying and securing your Bitcoin.
Join our Bitcoin Basics community in our new Telegram group at bitcoinbasics.help/telegram. No ads, no altcoins, shitcoins, no other nonsense, only Bitcoin information, education and discussion at bitcoinbasics.help/telegram. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Bitcoin Basics podcast with your host, Gordon. That's me, and I have Faris with me as well. Our proof of recording is the 17th of December, 2021. The current price of Bitcoin is 47,930. The current block height or block number is all-time highs, 714,453. If you got that joke, well done. And $1 is 2,036 Satoshis, according to the bitcoin.clarkmoody.com dashboard. Faris, we are privileged. Earlier this week, we interviewed Herman from Bitcoin Akasi about the Bitcoin Lightning Network and how that's integrated into the amazing work that he's doing and his coaches in empowering marginalized kids in South Africa. And almost at the other end of the spectrum, we're talking to the CEO of a $1 million company helping enterprises plug into the Bitcoin Lightning Network. So I kind of have to sort of refresh myself in that how lucky you are, how privileged you are. And both conversations were amazing. I thought today's conversation was fascinating from a technical point of view. And you missed a little bit of the first part of the podcast, which is fine because we geeked out about our technical backgrounds. But what did you think?
Yeah, apologies, everyone had to come in a bit late to this one, but these last two conversations that we've had about the Bitcoin Lightning Network have really changed my perception on it. I go into this a bit more detail in the interview here. It is a much bigger deal than what I thought it would be. I knew Bitcoin Lightning would be a game changer. I just thought it was a long time away, but it's happening quickly and sooner than I expected. And I mentioned this as well. Shone is a lot like you, Gordon, in that he comes from a tech side, a developer side, but very, very good at explaining things in layman's term for us non-technical people. So yeah, two very different spectrums, but both about the Bitcoin Lightning Network, and yet really, really recommend it, and something we need to start paying a lot more attention to because it is moving fast. It is the Bitcoin Lightning Network.
So should we change our podcast to the Bitcoin Lightning Network Basics podcast?
Nah, we're good.
Okay. We could do both. Here's the interview.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, and share so we can find others like yourself.
Today, I'm flying solo, so no Faris today, everyone. But we have the pleasure of Shone Anstey. I should have actually asked you if that's correct beforehand.
That's bang on the money. Very rare. So you win the prize.
Wow. Okay. Fantastic. I win a couple of Lightning Bitcoins. So
let's send you some sats.
Yeah, Shone, I know this question's boring. You get it all the time, but how about you tell us, maybe even before Bitcoin, like what's your background and do you want to give us your origin story?
My origin story. So for sure, I'll talk about the origin story in tech and then some of my personal life, if that's of interest. But sir, I've been in tech for over 25 years, all internet-based technologies, starting companies back in the mid to late 90s, all involved in analytics and kind of, worked through that field to the 2000s and came by Bitcoin very honestly. It was introduced by a cousin of mine who was in the space, and we got it right away. We understood what it was. It's kind of like, hey, it would seem natural, like this is digital money for the internet. And that was really started. I did some mining back in 2012 and worked in the space, built out industrial Bitcoin mines in 2014 for a client. And late 2014, 2015, we looked at the space, said, we really need to bring our analytics background to the forefront to create compliance software to allow institutions to get into Bitcoin. And a lot of Bitcoin maxers are really opposed to that kind of stuff. But I'm a pragmatist and looking at going, hey, you're not going to get Wall Street money in here unless you can meet certain parameters. It's just not going to happen. And for very simple reasons for the listeners, board of directors and senior officers of a public company, if they were to get fined for taking Bitcoin and they were negligent and didn't have compliance software in place, they potentially expose themselves to being personally liable, meaning they can get sued by individuals. And no board in the world's ever going to do that. It's not going to happen. So unless you have reporting stuff around it, you're not going to get Wall Street money. You're not going to get institutional money to flow into the space. And that's kind of the first phase of bridging the old school financial network with the modern financial network. And things will continue to morph and become decentralized and the world will change, but we have to get through this portion of it. Now, since then, that compliance software, blockchain intelligence group, we went public in the Canadian markets in 2017. We raised about $23 million, and we survived the crypto winter. And during that time, we bought a company called Netcoins, and combined the two to create a compliance-first exchange. And that company recently hit $1 billion market cap and is one of Canada's best exchanges and biggest exchanges. It's actually fully licensed across Canada as of about 2 months ago. One of the first to receive a license like that, and it's in the public market. So it's allowed a lot of people to get into crypto in Canada, and has been great to see it go from the ideas to the full gamut, and has been quite the journey for myself and other co-founders in there, and the highs and the lows, and all extreme highs and extreme lows, all fueled with caffeine in between it. So it's just to accentuate it, and that was the. After 2019, after I did that acquisition, we have Mark Binns in charge of that, and teams have done a good job. I started Liquid LQwD, which recently went public on the Toronto Stock Exchange, following the same playbook we did for my other startup that had success. And we're all about the Bitcoin Lightning Network and the Bitcoin Lightning Network and where it's going to unlock the value for Bitcoin and bring Bitcoin to the next billion people.
Awesome. I have about 15 questions out of that. But before we get started, Sean, I've been stalking you on LinkedIn. So doing a little bit of research.
Okay, great.
No, don't worry. And you I think you're the founder of XPC Technology Services, because I've got a tech background, and your background with mine is fairly similar, like Linux and data and databases and a little bit of programming. I don't know about you, Sean. I pretend to be a programmer, but I wouldn't hire myself as a programmer.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. I have great people that work for me. I do programming when I want to for myself, or for we grabbing some. I can grab an API and insert it to a database and have the data pull and set up the crons and the timers on the Linux systems. That's what I do. But I'm not a hardcore programmer. But I know enough within that, and I'm a very, very good head for business and numbers and understand the tech, so I can marry the two together, and that's really where my strength is. So
awesome, yeah. I know enough to be dangerous, so
there you go.
There's that, yeah. So I'm going to give you a quick lightning round just to start with, because you mentioned a few things in your XPC LinkedIn. C++ or Perl?
Oh boy, well, Perl, you'd have to go C++, but certainly Perl was old school from the 90s and a very powerful language. But you could do the same. If I remember correctly, you could do a lot of the same things. There's many ways to get to point A to point B, and it wasn't necessarily the right way to do it. But Perl was tremendously powerful, and I wish we had done a few more of our project in Perl at the time. And there was a stretch that we used Microsoft C, and this is back in the 90s, and we got hung up on some bug in the Microsoft language, and it wasn't open source, and we had no way of fixing it, and we had to rewrite a bunch of code, and it really hung us up. And that was a great lesson at age 26. And I was like, never again. We will use open source languages from here on in, and we'll never, I apologize to the Perl community, and I didn't quite, but I wish I had. I felt like I should. I'm like, forgive us, we sinned.
I'm exactly the same. It's like when you get into Bitcoin and then you discover Ethereum and altcoins. It's okay,
Right.
You dabble in the casino, but then you quickly realize that it's all garbage.
Right.
I started off with Pearl, actually, one of my first jobs. So that was my
Wow.
my entry into the deep. And it's a trigger word for me. Whenever someone mentions Pearl, I have nightmares. and then I moved across to C++, and I did a bit of Linux programming, which was fascinating. But I won't bore our audience because we've probably lost most of them. But yeah, I think one thing before we get into Liquid and Bitcoin Lightning, one of the things you mentioned was a Bitcoin industrial mining company.
Right.
Or what were you doing there?
Yeah. So there was a company that I knew, and they hired me on. So it wasn't my company, but we actually set up back in the day, 2014. We set up about 100. There was a warehouse down in Washington State. We had like all kinds of miners coming in. We had to build with the power. It was quite the undertaking. They mined like 100 Bitcoin at the time. They had the ability to mine more and more, and it was just a good experience in terms of building all that out. So I was contracted to build it, but it was definitely an experience and a half of setting up all kinds of miners and then connecting them to pools and using all the knowledge I had learned from my own personal mining. And certainly the power requirements. And it just amazes me. So back then you had, mining gear that went from processing on you could run a miner off your laptop to your video card. And then went from video card to these 5 gigahash machines that were, and by the time the 5 gigahash machine arrived, you'd already had the 10, the 20, the 50, the 100 within a 6-month span. When anything you bought was just out of date before it even arrived. And eventually you got to the 1 terahash machines, and the ones we put in were 2 terahash machines. So you had a lot more life cycle out of them. But it still got down to power. And now you've got these machines that come in there. And I think at the time the facility was pushing at 100 terahash, but now you get that out of one machine. So, and really the Bitcoin mining gear has probably got about 3-year life on it, or more if you've got really great power costs on it and rising Bitcoin price. So it's just amazing how quickly that cycle changed, but it was a good experience, and we're grateful for it.
And are you talking ASICs or are you talking FGPAs or what?
I'm talking ASICs. Oh, there was all ASICs, the whole thing. They were S2 miners and they were rack mount, and unlike the ones we have now. And I quite like the design of them. I thought they were really kind of great for building out a really logical facility. And that's probably more because I come from a data center background as well through the 2000s and building up facilities and cross-connecting data centers around Canada and or Seattle and Vancouver and that kind of stuff. So it appealed to my data center background. But the new miners, the way they set up, they're designed for high density and a great wall of heat. And that's what people don't understand. When you get you get 100 of these things together, 1,000, it's basically 1,000 hair dryers running full tilt 24/7. And the amount of heat that it puts out is astronomical. And you just don't have any idea until you're standing in front of this wall of heat. And you're like, oh, it's a big problem. It's a really big problem.
Yeah, my ex-girlfriend knows all about that, but we will leave that story for another day. Now, Sean, if I asked you to make an Ethernet cable for me, would you be able to do that nowadays?
I could. You want an A or a B standard?
Oh, whatever. Yeah.
I'd have to look up the color coding on the internet, but I have the gear here. I could punch down a cable for you. I'll test it before I give it to you. How about that? I'll run the cable testing on it. We'll be sure it works. I'm a little rusty.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, that's great. To be honest, one of the things that I learned during my data center life was that kind of stuff, making Ethernet cables. I mean,
right.
Getting down below the floor, you had the detachable tiles with the tool, right, and you rip them off and
pop the tool out. 100%. No, totally right. The air conditioning's blowing. It's funny how you had it set up there. I see Ferris has joined us here. So excellent. Nice to meet you, Ferris.
Sean, nice to meet you. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Yeah, just wrapping up the day and a good chat with Gordon. We're reminiscing about some of our data center days and how our tech history is all morphed into Bitcoin and the future here. So.
Oh yeah, no, I remember 2013, 2014, Gordon was telling me about Bitcoin, and it was like most non-tech people just kind of went over your head. But no, I've learned a lot from him since then.
It's a brave new world for sure. And it's I'm sure he came by it honestly, coming from a data center background and looking at, I've always looked at Bitcoin as that, especially the Lightning Network, it's layer 8 to the 7-layer OSI stack, even though technically the layer 8 is the human user let's forget all that. It's layer 8. Bitcoin is the trust protocol of the internet. Money is that first use case, a massive first use case, like email was and communication first use case for TCP/IP. It's going to go way beyond just money, but we have a tremendous opportunity as the world has changed over the next 10 years.
And this is what sorry, I'll just jump in very quickly. I'll probably just catch up here. Yeah, this is what we're finding more and more. And this is something I actually like to ask my people that we interview is coming from a tech side. It seems to me that 2010 already, the knowledge gap for new people coming into Bitcoin was huge. And it feels like as people are just starting to understand Satoshis, they're starting to grasp, we still get people thinking, I have to buy a whole Bitcoin. Right. But now we've got Lightning Network, we've got all these other things, DeFi coming in, so much thing coming in. It feels like that knowledge gap is getting bigger and bigger. So for us, we like to focus on the basics, and it feels that is still so predominant. So yeah, that's just something that I've noticed coming from a non-tech perspective and I've kind of come to the point where I've said to people, you don't need to understand how mining works to appreciate Bitcoin. So don't worry about mining.
Yeah, it's a complicated topic. And here in Vancouver, it makes it extra complicated because back in 2015, we were raising money for my first venture, which is often became a successful company on the stock market. But one of the things we did, we went to the local firms here. And Vancouver is a gold mining town. This is all about mining. It's mining. It's one of the Vancouver and Toronto are the mining capitals of the world. If you're in mining, you must have. It's like San Francisco. Like that's what it does. You come here, it's all about gold. So we were actually we're trying to raise money, and people asked us about Bitcoin mining. We're talking about analytics, and we'd probably do a little mining to supplement our income. And we explained what I thought was a great explanation of Bitcoin mining at the time. And at the end of the conversation around the boardroom, I got this look back on, well, do you have a 43-101 report? And now, for those who don't know what that is, 43-101 is a resource report. That is how many ounces are in the ground. And I just sat there and went, we're in the wrong boardroom. We're in the wrong place. This is the wrong people we should be talking to. We just got asked for a resource, how many ounces we're going to dig out of the ground, Bitcoin mining. True story, good lesson. And we found other places, and it worked out for us.
So, Sean, how many Bitcoin Lightning is there out there?
That's a good question. How many Bitcoin Lightning are out there? How many Bitcoin are on the Lightning Network? There's over 3,000 Bitcoin, about 3,200 Bitcoin on the Lightning Network right now. They're sort of locked in the network, on channels, at least on the public channels. Liquidity, LQwD, as a company, we have 150 Bitcoin on our balance sheet that we're putting to work on the Lightning Network. So, if we get it all deployed, we'll be about 5% of the current network. But you'll see more and more absorbed into the Lightning Network. And for users who don't know what the Lightning Network is or are a little confused about it, it's what we call Bitcoin's layer 2. It's a scaling solution for Bitcoin. So those familiar with Bitcoin, you've got a really secure network secured by all kinds of Bitcoin miners and all kinds of computational power all over the world. Ultra secure, trusted network, and it can handle about 7 transactions a second. So it's fairly slow, but it's fine if you're trying to transfer lots of value, and it's great for securing the network. What the Lightning Network does, it rides on top of the Bitcoin Lightning Network natively, and it allows you to scale Bitcoin from 7 transactions into the millions of transactions per second and beyond. It will scale into the billions as the network continues to grow. And what happens is it's actually what they call there's channels and nodes. So let's break that down. So a node is just a computer. That's all it is, just a server running somewhere in the world. And on that, you're running the open source Bitcoin Lightning Network software. And when you create that software, you create payment channels to other people running the Lightning Network software. And you have a series of these nodes all over the world, and they work kind of like the internet. So when you want to send money, it may go from hop to hop to hop until it finds its end destination, and the person gets paid on the other end. Very similar to when you want to bring up Google.com, you may not necessarily go directly there. You may go through your internet provider and a few other steps until your data gets there and it comes back to you. It functions very similar to how the internet works. And what the Lightning Network is unlocking Bitcoin's value. And one of the ways we look at it is, we always ask, people ask, what's going to be Bitcoin's iPhone moment? What's going to be that killer app that's going to transform Bitcoin and take it to the masses? And I've been thinking about it. I've been talking to people in the industry, but really my take on it is the Lightning Network is Bitcoin's iPhone moment. And the trigger will be when the network matures to the point where liquidity and channel rebalancing is actually solved and working flawlessly, the value of the network be unlocked, and the Lightning Network its true potential will really be rolled out around the world as a global payment system, as a global trust network, and it's going to absorb a lot of Bitcoin on it as it continues to morph. So I'll stop there in case there's questions. I don't.
No, that's a fantastic explanation. And this is the Bitcoin Basics podcast. And Faris and I, our very last interview episode, actually, we interviewed Herman from Bitcoin Akasi over in South Africa. So he's helping, him and his team are helping disadvantaged youth, and they're teaching them surfing, but they're also, empowering them with life skills and other things as well. And they're using Bitcoin Lightning. So it's actually timely that you're on because he's given us a real world use case over in South Africa, and you're giving us, perhaps at the opposite end of the spectrum, another use case, because I'm assuming there's a lot of institutional transactions in that.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, and share so we can find others like yourself.
Yeah, I was just agreeing with you 100%. And you're seeing it down in El Salvador too, where I recently came back from, where it's been adopted as a national currency, and Lightning Network is allowing you to do those microtransactions. You can pay for a Big Mac using Lightning Network, and certainly it's going to affect a lot of countries in terms of remittances. So a lot of these countries, like at El Salvador, were about 20%, 27% of the GDP, a huge number. I think it's 22, 27, a really astronomical number of the country's GDP comes from remittances from people living, a lot of expats living in America, sending money back. And they're using traditional means, so they're getting bled off. 15% of that gets bled off to rich institutions, it's corporations. Now the Lightning Network, they can save more of that money, and you're talking about a country where the average salary is between $300 and $400 US per month. So 15% of $1,000 or 500, that's a significant amount of money when it comes to a place like that. So it will transform it, and I think you'll see other countries in that region start to adopt it as well as the year goes on, and it's a great use case for Bitcoin and Lightning Network. And it actually gets down to, we look at in Canada and America and stable countries around the world where there's still trust in our currency and our economy. We don't necessarily see the importance of it per se. I may change the back end financial accounting and what have you, but when you get outside of our little bubble and you realize, like, if you're in Turkey right now and you're using the Turkish lira, well, you'd rather have Bitcoin because you're getting bled dry out of the Turkish lira. It's losing, it's lost half its value this year, and it's continuing to plummet. If you were in Lebanon earlier this year, you got wiped out. And so Bitcoin is a saving grace. We talk about it being volatile, but it is nowhere near the volatility that most of the world is used to. And that's where it's going to continue the seeds will be planted and continue to grow, and eventually will morph back into the North American economy as the payment rails here are changed.
Sean, just on that, and I want to talk about El Salvador, but is that the main use case for Lightning? I think a lot of listeners to this show, we know about Bitcoin. We know it's got 10 minutes blocks. People have probably heard about Lightning. We know that, Bitcoin's too slow for payments if you want to pay for coffee or micropayments. Is that the main use case for Lightning? So someone in El Salvador would adopt Lightning, a merchant, a customer, or whatever. Or are there other use cases? I know there's some gaming, and I know there's talk of exchanges using exchange-to-exchange transactions with Lightning. Like, what are the use cases for Lightning?
Absolutely. So exchange-to-exchange, my previous company, that Netcoin's one of Canada's large exchanges, we've signed an agreement with them so they can take Bitcoin deposits over Lightning Network. So what happens is they have instant deposits over Lightning Network once they finish the integration. And I think you're going to see more and more exchanges as the network capacity and the maturity of Lightning Network happens. You can see more exchanges adopt it, so they can have instant deposits, instant withdrawals. And what you're going to see is better price discovery, because you can now do true real-time arbitrage using the rapid fire Lightning Network and take advantage of price discrepancies on the exchanges. So you're going to see a little smoothing out of the price there. Certainly gaming, gamers have always been, at the forefront of in the Bitcoin space. But in-game payments and the ability to actually, do upgrades for whatever you want and then take it with you. And there's even games where you can earn sats and win sats within the game. And so those kind of things off of as opposed to some of your traditional games where you pay for upgrades, you can't take it with you, can't sell. The economy's locked in its own token or what have you. The gamers are demanding they want something else. And so it's going to become a part of that whole economy as well. So there's many use cases that are starting to unfold. And you're starting to see it also for people are talking about as anti-spam measures for chats and what have you. But I do think, as speaking to Roy over at Breez, and he's a big proponent of we really need to make sure we stay focused on Lightning Network becoming a great payment mechanism for Bitcoin and hard money first before anything else. And we're not trying to turn Lightning Network into the internet. We're trying to onboard the internet onto Lightning Network and for payments and make sure we stay focused on it. I agree with him that that's definitely where the laser needs to be right now. And it'll be used in ways we don't know. It's an open architecture, open network. So people will use it in ways that we haven't dreamt up yet. But that's its first use case. It's very powerful. Fix the money, fix the world, but also change how trust is done around the world through this open architecture and the Bitcoin network. And that actually gets into some of the philosophies that we talk about in our company, why Bitcoin. And as I mentioned earlier, we see Bitcoin as that layer 8 to the 7-layer OSI stack. For those who don't know what that is, the internet is made up of 7 technology layers, and we call this the OSI technology stack. And we're using it right now to talk over Zoom, and we use it all day long. It's quite literally the technology that makes up the plumbing of the internet. And Bitcoin fits in there as this layer 8. It fits in there as the trust layer. And we tried to do this back in the 90s, and we failed. We centralized it. We just didn't have the technology to work with. Bitcoin came along as it saw that ability to create a digital timestamp using the network and with no third-party intermediary. And money just happens to be the first massive use case because at the end of the day, money is trust. And so it really represents a fundamental shift to how the internet is going to function over the next 10 years, and it lays the groundwork to change how trust is done online. And we look at some of these countries like El Salvador and other places around there, and we wonder through our entire lives why they're mired in corruption, they're mired in third world poverty. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but ultimately it gets down to corruption in many ways. And so they're highly corrupt countries. You can't get ahead there unless you are corrupt. So people leave to get a better life in America or other places. And this gets down to a theory I have. It's called imperialism never died. It just simply morphed. And right now we have intellectual imperialism. We have for the last during the computer age and a long time, where we strip mine intellectual capacity from developing nations by offering them a better life. And who wouldn't take it? And so if you can actually use the Lightning Network and the Bitcoin network as it continues to morph out over the next 10, 20, 30 years as a way to reduce corruption, kleptocracies, have sovereign rights, have sovereign banking, hard money, property rights that mean something, and all these different aspects of trust, you can raise an entire country up the corruption index. I mean, less corruption in there, and give a reason for their best and brightest to stay. And if they can retain their best and brightest over the course of 3-4 generations throughout our lifetime and beyond, we have the chance to turn those countries around into much more productive and give people a chance at getting ahead and change the dynamics of something that's just been going on for hundreds, for a very long time, right? Mm. And that cycle could finally be broken, and that's kind of the hope. So short term, we have to do what's very practical. There's certain things there, but we certainly hope that we're planting the seeds and we'll grow into that hope that the future generations will stand under, and it will change how the world works.
I can agree with you more there, Sean, especially coming from an economics and political standpoint. I think the decentralization of finance is the next step. We had the decentralization of political power, decentralization of military power, and now we are looking at the decentralization of finance. Looking at Liquid, when Gordon and I first started looking at Liquid when it was coming out, so looking at purely from a practical point of view and an economist point of view, to me, Bitcoin was a long-term store of value. Still early days for it to be daily currency. Right. So so going back a couple of years now, I'm looking at this thing like, okay, this is more of a gimmick that insiders will enjoy, but you want to hold on to your Bitcoins. You don't want to spend them on your lattes and your grocery shopping. So I thought, yeah, Liquid, that's, it'll be a nice gimmick. It'll take decades to catch on because people won't want to spend their Bitcoins because it could go up, factor of however many, right. 10, add a zero every 2 years. Why would you want to spend it? But looking at it now, and like we talked to this guy who's running this NGO in South Africa, they're paying people on the Lightning Network. And what they're finding is that they're spending their money less. So, and I've found this as well. And I'm not plugging anyone here, but I've been playing around with a Wirex card. And I find when I go to buy something at a grocery store, I have Bitcoin on my Wirex, and then I will transfer what I'm going to spend that day into New Zealand dollars. Now, I wouldn't do that in the past. I was always put on the credit card, worry about the credit card at the end of the month. But now it's like, okay, I'm not going to buy that. I'm not going to buy that. I'm not going to buy that because I'm spending Bitcoins. So I'm finding I'm using this thing more. So I'm using Bitcoin more and more every single day because I'm thinking if it's fiat currency, I'm just not really thinking about it. But now I'm spending something that could go up in value. So I'm finding I'm spending less money because I've made the move to Bitcoin.
Right.
So that's just been a mental shift for me to go, okay, by moving the Bitcoin on a daily basis, not just a long-term store of value, I'm appreciating what I'm spending more on. So I suppose long way to get your question here, and I'm probably just talking more to give you a break, is what has been your anticipation of how people will respond to the Lightning Network? And has it exceeded, met, or what has been a surprise for you? Like, what did you expect the response to be versus how has it actually been?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we're still very early days for Lightning Network, but we're at an inflection point. So I like to, my tech history is I like to play where the technology is not bleeding edge, but it's not quite mainstream. We can add a lot of value and build out almost in stealth because people are kind of confused about it. And then as it becomes more mainstream, we're building into this wave. And what we're seeing, in terms of the Lightning Network, this year alone, the growth of the network itself has been about 204%. So sizable growth, and again, we're seeing acceleration now. We're seeing more and more adoption. As the network, as it becomes more and more mature. Now, certainly from it solves that issue of like, how do you want to buy coffee if you want to be paid using Bitcoin? And I agree with you. A lot of people, certainly myself, we're cautious of where we want to spend our Bitcoin because we know it still has a lot of value to be unlocked. But certainly, we hear stories of people in Nigeria and certain El Salvador where that's becoming a circular economy and people want to be paid directly to their wallet, and that their point of sale system is their non-custodial wallet, where they don't trust the banks and they're doing peer-to-peer. Then their economy is starting to run off of that. And so we'll see more of that continue to power it forward. But I mean, some of it gets down to why Bitcoin has value. Why Bitcoin has value, and we hear a lot of we're certainly there's the mining aspect. We have all this computational power and return electricity into sats and what have you. But I have yeah, that's all there. But I have a simpler view on that in terms of just the value of a protocol and why protocols are so important. And you look back, sort of protocol changes over the years, and you look back to, let's go back in history. 1971, processors come out, this big protocol. They and within 10 years you have Apple and Microsoft being born. 10 years after that, you have the internet coming out. TCP/IP and the protocol, and within 10 years you have Google and Facebook, and then 10 years after that. So 20 years from protocol to protocol, you have Bitcoin coming out. And within 10 years, now you've got the Coinbases of the world and the Krakens of the world and the next institutions that will drive things forward. And so you look at the value of the protocol. When I look at it from just the perspective of saying, hey, like, I remember back in 98, 99, we looked at the internet and said, and I remember there was an article came out and said, the internet's worth 180 billion US dollars. It would take Microsoft and Yahoo, the big tech firms. This is what it cost them to rebuild it. Fast forward to 2004, Google goes public. We think the internet's worth $3-4 trillion. By 2010, it's between 10 and 20 trillion dollars. And now what do we look at? What's the value of the internet? It's an unfathomable number. You just cannot imagine. It's in the hundreds of trillions. And that's just the original 7 layers of that tech stack, the OSI stack that we talk about. So when we look at Bitcoin, say, okay, well, what's layer 8? What's the trust layer worth? Right now, we think the trust layer of the internet, which is going to change the entire plumbing in it, it's only worth $1 trillion. Well, I don't think that's going to remain at that. I think that value will be unlocked because now we have the ability to do trust, money, many other things, but ultimately trust. That trust protocol, and where everything stems from that, is going to be that value will be unlocked, and it's gonna happen rapid fire as Bitcoin is just a continuation of the revolution of the internet. This is the next phase. And when we see it from there, we can start to see the impact it's going to have around the world. So I'm with you. There's definitely, we'll have more and more adoption, and certainly people who need it. And there's that immediate need. We're privileged to have alternatives right now that work MasterCard, Visa, debit, that we can tap things, but a lot of places around the world, and seeing it when you travel, it's not so feasible. And there's so many, there's a tremendous number of people around the world that don't have access to any financial services at all, which is just mind blowing. And so, when will that actually take place? When will we look? And I think what you have to do is we look at it from our company perspective at Liquid. Liquid FinTech, we look at it from the adoption of the internet. So the internet is probably about a 92% penetration in North America, give or take. But in other places around the world, it's about 47%. So we talk about cash going away, but it won't go away until you have tremendous, until there's internet everywhere for digital money. But certainly in Norway, places where it's everywhere, it may happen sooner. But the power of Bitcoin, the power of Lightning Network will follow the adoption curve of the internet itself, because it is an extension and continuation of the revolution of the internet. And as there's more and more adoption of the internet through places around the world that need it, they're going to gravitate towards Bitcoin and hard money.
And that's a fascinating point that I bring up a lot. So I recently had a conversation with a bunch of accountants here in New Zealand because they needed some input on Bitcoin, because more and more customers are getting into it, cryptocurrency. So they want to understand it some more. And this is exactly the point that I make to them. I say, you couldn't buy shares directly in the internet. You could buy shares in companies that use the internet.
Right.
With Bitcoin, you are buying a stake directly in this new technology. And
100%.
That's why you can't look at the price of Bitcoin and go, well, that's insane. Because I remember, we'll show them a screenshot of someone on Twitter saying, Bitcoin's too volatile. I'm getting out at $14. Can't handle it. So you can't put a number, as you just said, you can't put a number on the internet. What is it worth? You can't do that. And this is what I say to people is I showed them exactly an adoption rate curve, and it shows all new technologies, the adoption rate. And when people look at, Bitcoins, $70,000, oh, I'm too late. Well, no, you're not, when less than 10% of global population is still using it. It's still early days.
Extremely early.
Yeah, I'm glad we record this, because some of the stuff you just said, I'm probably going to use word for word into my presentations.
Go for it. Yeah, absolutely. Go for it. And before you hopped on here, we were just talking to Gordon, and one of the things I was Roy over at Breez, wallet, Lightning Network, great Lightning Network wallet from Breez. He's one of our advisors. We love the wallet. We love the company. Smart group, smart team over there. And we were chatting on Telegram, and he used to talk about the need, Lightning Network is the way to onboard the next billion people into Bitcoin, and he's right. And we need to stay focused on that. And my comment to him back is, we talk about the iPhone moment for Bitcoin. I think we mentioned this prior, but really the Lightning Network is Bitcoin's iPhone moment, and its trigger will be when liquidity and payment channels are mature and functioning as that seamlessly, and transactions work really, really well. That'll be the trigger for things, and that'll happen in the next year and a half, 2 years, where it'll be never looking back. And for your users who don't know what that means. So when we open up payment channels between each other, so if Gordon has a payment channel to Ferris and I've got a payment channel to Ferris, and we can open up a payment channel between each other, and we have to put Bitcoin on those payment channels. So a technical requirement of the Lightning Network when you open a payment channel is you must have Bitcoin locked onto that channel in order for it to work. It's like table stakes. It's required because the Bitcoin is passed from hop to hop by the network itself. And if it passes through a certain hop, you may get charged a micro fee for being handled and sent off there. So Ferris, you and I could have a payment channels open with each other. We get a 1 Bitcoin sent on there. We could do 1 million transactions inside of an hour or whatever we choose, back and forth. And there's a ledger on either side. And that ledger keeps track of what the balances are. And we could decide at the end of that hour that we're done, our business is done, we've settled up, and we can close that payment channel. And the final balance of our Bitcoin is written back as a single transaction back to Bitcoin's primary network as one transaction. So we just did 1 million transactions in Bitcoin, but the main network, which we know is slow but ultra secure, registers that one final balance for each of your wallet and my wallet. So when we talk about payment channels and liquidity, we must have enough Bitcoin on those channels because it gets sent from side to side, almost like an abacus where you're sending beads back and forth, and you want to make sure it's balanced. So these kind of things will be smoothed out and solved as it continues to mature. And when it does, there'll be no looking back. This will be the iPhone moment for Bitcoin and the entire industry.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, me and Gordon were around during the whole block wars, and for me, like my narrative for Bitcoin was based on trickle down economics, in that it's going to be like what we're seeing now. You're going to have, the guys that go in like the Charlie Shrimps that get shot in the back and all that kind of stuff. And now, right. And then what we're seeing now is a smart money coming in, more hedge fund managers. We had Pantera originally and all this. So now we're seeing more and more smart money coming in. I thought by the time you're going to go through, to me, I thought the iPhone moment for me was when we replaced a petrodollar with Bitcoin, where oil is trading Bitcoins instead of US dollar, which makes a lot of sense to me. Mm-hmm. And I thought it would trickle down to the little guy eventually using Bitcoin. But we're not. We're seeing a groundswell where it's the little guys getting in now, especially thanks to Lightning Network. So it's completely changed my macro political opinion of Bitcoin, where it's not going to be the way we see things work. It's not going to be a trickle down to the little guy. The little guy is getting in before the big movers are getting in. So that's been really encouraging and
I agree with you.
Stimulating for me to see.
That's a really good way of putting it for sure. And you're certainly seeing, regulations, and you got, traditional financial institutions that are they're somewhat beholden to what's going on out there, and the network effect, what's happening with Bitcoin and Lightning Network, and all these kind of things. It's like water seeping through. The governments they can only clamp it down for so long before it's a groundswell, and it is the sound of inevitability. It is unstoppable. And you hear the bluster out of Washington right now, and you hear all the we're going to regulate Bitcoin, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We heard this back in 2002, 2003, 2000, where politicians are like, we're going to shut the internet down. The internet's evil. We got to tax it. We got to regulate it. We got to do all these things, and they're all trying to score political points. At the end of the day, it's really tough to stop technology, which is true open architecture, where anybody can use it. There's really no, like the internet, anybody can use it. There's no real central body for it, and it's really tough to fight against that. And ultimately, you're talking about technology which is 10x than anything else that's out there. And when you got something which is 10x or 100x better than anything else, there people are just naturally going to gravitate towards it. And it is the sound of inevitability, which is coming down the tracks here, and it's unstoppable. So governments, they're talking about central bank digital currencies. We know China has kicked out all the miners. As recently on NTD TV, a Chinese company that did a Skype thing, because Skype's the only thing that could work over there to get to them, and basically just said, the Chinese government has made a major geopolitical mistake here, which will become very evident in 10 years. They've handed the win to North America. They've handed the win to America and other Western nations as Bitcoin miners have fled, and ultimately, it's not a bad thing. I prefer to see Western nations have more of the mining power, and at least they're democratic at some level for the most part, and as opposed to a communist nation where we're at the whim. But Bitcoin's the honey badger, and it just keeps trucking along, and it will not be stopped.
Yeah, China mining Bitcoin is like sending your kid to their room. You're just going to see them at the table an hour later.
Totally right. So yeah, it's a huge mistake. I know they're trying to get their own central bank digital currency. They wanted to try to break sanctions and the U.S. dollar and take over from the petrodollar and all those types of things that are there. And America will push back with its own central bank digital currency. But at the end of the day, just as we saw the maturation of Bitcoin mining going from individuals to corporations, I think Max Kaiser talks about it going to nation states, and it is inevitable that nation states will try to get hard money. And be a part of that, and they'll back their. The U.S. wants to fix its issue in with its dollar and inflation. It really needs more hard assets backing it effectively, right? So you can buy Bitcoin, you can buy gold. That's an oversimplification for sure for what's going on there. But ultimately, people need to trust in what's in that currency, and we'll see how it plays out. I don't see the U.S. dollar going away anytime soon. The United States, it's very tough to collect. It's very tough to knock off a superpower. And I look back to, I believe the story, it was Chile back in the 30s. They owed Germany a lot of money, a lot of debts. And Germany collected by sending in their navy and knocking on the bank's door and taking the gold literally at force with their navy parked off. Really, the reality is, who's going to collect from the United States? No one's going to collect from the United States. That's not going to happen. But I mean, America's amazing. It's a democratic country. It'll adopt and it'll take on Bitcoin at some point in time, and it'll continue to truck along. In some ways, that whole 50 states all competing with each other, and it's a little messy at times, but eventually it finds its way. And I look at Bitcoin as, Bitcoin represents, the separation of state and money. It represents democracy, but democracy is messy at times. And sometimes you get polarized views, but eventually you find your way down the center path and continue to make steps forward. It's slower than, communism, other places like that, but eventually it finds it that way where it should be. And Bitcoin is what, represents democracy, and it's going to find its way to the heart of America.
That's very kind words coming from a Canadian.
Well, that's so funny you say that. We have such an interesting relationship with the United States, and I spent a lot of time down in Washington D.C. and a lot of stuff going down there. We have this weird relationship with America. America's kind of like that older cousin or older brother that you love and you follow everywhere, and you guys go on crazy adventures together. But then every now and then it turns to you and says, "Hey, hold my beer, watch this." And you're like, "Oh, don't do that. Mom's gonna be really mad." And, we need that to live. So in Canada, we tend to be more the voice of reason with our American brothers, and but ultimately we're proud of our military here, and we punch far above our weight for what we're capable. But we're keenly aware that we sleep under the freedom and we sleep under the eagle's wing every night, and we're grateful for that.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think every country's got sort of a big brother, little brother, younger brother sort of relationship with neighboring countries, and yeah, it's fascinating. Just going back to El Salvador, and you can bet that all the countries around it are looking at El Salvador. They're mining off geothermal energy from volcanoes, and forget about the short-term volatility of Bitcoin. I mean, in 5 years' time, if Bitcoin's 200,000, you can bet Honduras and Panama and all these sort of countries are looking at that, saying, where our currency is just being deflated, and look at what's happening in El Salvador.
100%, yeah, and apparently their president's very popular in the the surrounding countries because he's kind of put El Salvador on the map, and I see that you could see Honduras or Guatemala or Nicaragua, one of these taking on Bitcoin the same way and getting into that, and starting to see that groundswell happening there. That's my prediction for the next country that'll take it on, one of those in that area there. But it seems natural that it will bleed over, but we'll see how it plays out.
Not to mention other developing countries like in Africa and where I am in Southeast Asia as well, amidst the perhaps different styles of government. And chatting over Zoom, I can't say too much about that, but yeah, they're very, very anti-Bitcoin here. Now, Shone, I know you're a latecomer to Bitcoin. You only got in 2012. So a lot of people to this podcast, I have to mention this every podcast. I don't know if you heard about it, but there's this thing called Ripple XRP, which is very cheap and it's very fast. So why would someone want to use the Lightning Network?
Yeah, Ripple. I mean, it's funny. Ripple will do what Ripple does. I'm betting on Bitcoin Lightning Network because Bitcoin Lightning Network is true open architecture, where there's no central control. Where Ripple is, there's central bodies, and they're trying to replace SWIFT and replace the banking layer. I've talked to the chairman of SBI about it and one-on-one and stuff like that. So they're keen on it, and it's really for me it's of no interest because we do not see it as an extension of the internet. It is not an internet technology. It's riding on top of the internet, but it's not true open architecture. It's not the trust layer of the internet. It will not replace hard money. You'll still be beholden to corporations. It doesn't mean they don't have some tech that has the value there. I do separate. I'm a bit of a maximalist, but I separate my thinking of Bitcoin money, what it is, between people that may issue a token, but it represents a startup and it's treated more like a stock, and certainly XRP. I know they got a lot of fanboys, and as we call it, and a lot of people who like it, but for me it has zero interest because I do not see it as internet technology.
Yeah, and I'm obviously being quite sarcastic for those
of course,
listeners. Yes. We're totally Bitcoin maximalists, and I'm a developer as well. I mean, I've just finished a course, and I've dabbled back in the past with Ethereum, and may have even invested in some of the altcoins, shitcoins, and whatnot. And some of them are interesting, but at the end of the day, you always come back to Bitcoin. And this is something that Faris says all the time. You got the smartest minds working on Bitcoin. You've got the smartest community. And there isn't a week that goes by with an NFT or a new coin like, oh my God, have you seen this coin? And they're doing 10,000 transactions a second. And I'm like, yeah, but no one's using the network. Like, try and put some actual traffic on the network.
100%.
And of course it's cheap. So just on that. And by the way, listeners, we have done episodes on Liquid and Liquid versus Lightning. So this may be confusing. We have done episodes on Blockstream's Liquid, and now we're talking to a Lightning liquidity company. Is that the best way?
Yeah, and we're called Liquid FinTech. So, and our Liquid is spelled LQwD, the same as our Toronto Stock Exchange ticker. And so a lot of people just call it, hey, LQwD. We call it Liquid, but we're Liquid FinTech, where Liquid, the network, is spelled the traditional Liquid way, and that's a private network to do some Bitcoin transactions between companies and what have you. But we're,
so is that
we're slightly different?
Is that basically what you're trying to build? Are you providing liquidity or? Join our Bitcoin Basics community in our new Telegram group at bitcoinbasics.help/Telegram. No ads, no altcoins, shitcoins, no other nonsense, only Bitcoin information, education, and discussion at bitcoinbasics.help/Telegram.
No, you are correct. So to answer your question, so we were known as what's called an LSP, a Lightning Network Service Provider. So we have a platform as a service. We worked on some time. It's a B2B platform. It's designed for institutions, and it's a way for them to hit a button and be able to spin up nodes and channels, tap into our routing nodes, our liquidity, and be able to make it very easy for them to integrate an API so that their exchange or wallet or what have you can get on the Lightning Network. What we want is we want them to use our platform and be able to route through our Lightning Network nodes, and we charge micro fees for some of that routing, like all nodes do, or most nodes do, and that's our business model from there. So we're really focused on making as big a footprint as we can on the Lightning Network with as many nodes and channels, and putting as much Bitcoin to work as we can. And so we raised to date 13 million. We bought 150 Bitcoin. We're rolling out more enterprise stuff, or we're putting more and more Bitcoin. It's all earmarked for that. And our target is to get to at least 1,000 Bitcoin and continue to drive liquidity and help solve that issue. So when I was down in El Salvador for the Adopting Bitcoin conference, yes, we're an LSP, but in many ways we're a liquidity as a service provider. So we make it easy for companies to get that. And to that end, we've announced that. So one of the main wallets, Breez, is actually connected to us, and we're helping to provide liquidity to it. What have you.
Awesome. I was going to ask you which wallet, but you've answered that already. Breez wallet.
Yeah, that's almost done. We're working on that. The teams are talking on Telegram, and we're getting close to that. Where we like the
awesome.
And that's our model for now, and we'll continue to look at the future where we're going to go. But we're all Bitcoin, all Lightning Network.
Awesome. And a lot of listeners to this show, they're familiar with Bitcoin, and they might even have Bitcoin, but they're maybe not so familiar with Lightning. With Bitcoin, you have Bitcoin, you want to send it, or you have some sats, you send it to another person, it's done. It may be a little bit slow, although, we compare it with the Swift network and it's not slow. But with Lightning, why is liquidity such a big deal, and channel balancing? And maybe you could just go through maybe someone who hasn't used Lightning before, but they have Bitcoin. Like, what are the differences, perhaps?
Right. So, I mean, the liquidity on the network. So what happens is you have to have, like we mentioned prior, you have to have Bitcoin locked on the channel, and it gets used to actually route forward payment. So if a payment goes through, say, 6 hops, we know the hop that has to go to next. We don't know the end point. That could be the end point. It may continue, but we have to be able to forward the Bitcoin from hop to the next route, and each hop has to have enough Bitcoin on it in order to facilitate the transaction. So for small transactions, it's very likely to succeed. If you're talking about large transactions, well, certainly if you're talking about millions of dollars, you should just use the Bitcoin primary network. But for small transactions, that's what the Lightning Network's for. And the more Bitcoin, the more channels that are open, the more capacity we'll have to handle bigger and bigger transactions. And so we have this imbalance of thing. Once we have the channels are set up where Bitcoin is sent from point A to point B, and you have your rest of your Bitcoin sitting at point B, you have to get them back to point A at some point to balance the channels to make sure that the Bitcoin can continue to go both ways. So think of it like an abacus, where you've taken beads from one side of the abacus and you pushed it to the other side of the abacus. At some point, you've got to get them back so you can continue to push things back and forth. And there's some things like where they have there's pools, there's loop, there's things where you can actually send the Bitcoin back to yourself. And there's things that are being worked on to smooth that out. There's some really smart minds working on the channel rebalancing issue, and it's getting more and more mature. And certainly, so one, just having more Bitcoin on the network, having a liquidity provider like us to step up and say, we'll make sure we have deep pockets and capacity. And then two, from a technology standpoint, solving how the Bitcoin can get rebalanced across the channel and seamlessly without human involvement. Right now, there's actually some involvement in it, but the network's becoming much more mature, and there's more software out there to automate this process. And as it hits that inflection point, that's when the network will be truly, truly useful.
So I tried to set up a Bitcoin Lightning node a couple of years ago, and I consider myself fairly technical. I can run a Linux server and whatnot. It's pretty challenging, number one, to set it up, and number two, to maintain it. To be honest, it was a complete pain in the ass. Right. That was a couple of years ago. Is that what you're providing, kind of like an Amazon AWS for businesses to sort of plug in? And
100%. That is exactly what LQwD does. Liquid FinTech does. But it's designed for enterprise. So there's other companies out there like Voltage. We talk to them, and there's other product where if you're a consumer, and they do some business stuff as well. And there's also Umbrel, which is great for end users. There's some other things now where it's much more plug and play. But to your point, even 2 years ago, I consider myself really technical, and I'm like, there's a lot of steps here to getting a node set up properly and then managing and maintaining it. But that just gets down to the seasoning of the network and the technology. And we're seeing it getting, there's companies like ours that are stepping in to make it easier and easier. And the core development is making it easier and easier to manage it. But it certainly wasn't that easy a couple of years ago. But it's gotten a lot better and will continue to improve.
Sean, sorry, just a while ago you mentioned LSP. Is that Liquid Service Provider? Is that what that means?
That's kind of what we call it, the Lightning Network Service Provider. So Lightning Service Provider. It's kind of like an ISP back in the 90s, where it makes it very easy to get on the internet. They provide you the software. You hit a button, you're on the internet. You hear
that's brilliant.
You hear the modem go off. But our model, that's part of our model. We like that, but that's only part of our model. Really, for us, as far as I'm concerned, enterprises, we make money off the enterprise, but the hosting is a small component. We want the routing, we want the routing fees, we want as big a footprint on the network as we can have, and we want to support the network that way. That's where you're going to have this rapid growth of the Lightning Network itself. So we had a 200% increase this year, but when we look at even the fee models itself, the fees are really, really small right now. You're not earning a lot. And so it's a volume-based type thing. But I do see, like the Bitcoin network, the fees will normalize to a more economical sense. Doesn't mean they're going to be expensive, but they'll certainly normalize. And we saw this with Bitcoin when it came out in 2009, 2010. The Bitcoin fee went up 10,300%. Sounds like a lot, but it ended up being, instead of being a fraction of a tiny fraction of a penny, it ended up being 20 cents. And then from 2012 to 2014, it went up another 1,300%. I see the future Lightning Network fees being, anywhere between 1% and 3% of whatever the main network fee is on a non-congested Bitcoin network. So if it's trading at 20 cents, it could be a half a penny for a transaction, or even a quarter penny, or what have you. But it will be much more economical for LSPs and node operators, and it will start to morph into the world of more professional companies coming in and putting a lot of resources behind it. We just happen to be one of the earlier ones in it, and it'll create more a better network experience for everybody, and people will use it, and it'll just continue to work seamlessly behind the scenes.
As far as the adoption, Sean, is there a specific industry group of people? Or is it wide ranging as to who's picking up on Liquid?
Pretty wide ranging. I mean, gamers are definitely taking it on. It's getting embedded in games. Certainly, the remittance industry, and there's a lot of startups hitting the remittance industry, and they're using Lightning Network. You continue to see that. But let's not forget that payments is a massive use case. And it's just a massive use case. You just can't get away from it. And it really, that's the one that's going to drive it forward. All the others is just on the periphery for now, but it will be continuation of payments as it rolls out.
And I think I know the answer to this, open source, but why did you guys decide to build on Lightning? Like you had a choice. You maybe DIY, create your own layer 2 payment solution or sidechain or something like that, or you could have done something like Blockstream Green or join with them. Like why Bitcoin Lightning?
Yeah, well, Bitcoin Lightning, it's native to Bitcoin. I mean, you're basically transferring from main network to layer two. It's all Bitcoin. We're not trying to create another token. We're not creating another Rails. And trying to create that network effect is one of the magical things that Bitcoin has. And Lightning Network is riding off of that. And it's very tough to get that network effect. And once you hit that escape velocity, it's near impossible to stop. And it's also very difficult to get to that point. And so we're and plus you're also using Bitcoin itself, which is the hardest native digital currency of the internet. And we're not reinventing some other token, what have you. No, the hat's off to Ethereum. I'm not anti-Ethereum. I kind of look at them because from back in my history, I look at them as sort of the Netscape of our time, in the sense that when Netscape Navigate, for those who don't know, they weren't born then, but back in the 90s, the internet, Netscape Navigate came out. It was like the first real web browser where you could actually visualize the internet. It actually came alive. You're like, wow, so they're doing command line, sending email off command line, and you had to be really techy. You could actually kind of see the internet, and it really worked. And it captured everybody's imagination and what have you. And they took it far, but ultimately they died the death of 1,000 cuts, and they were forced, trying to develop technology while it was still in its infancy and what have you. And the similarities with Ethereum is that Ethereum sort of came along and it captured everybody's imagination. Sunday, you could actually program for smart contracts. You could do cool things, and you can pick Ethereum apart if you like, but ultimately, I think it's really helped propel that component, that part of it forward. Now, will they die the death of 1,000 cuts? Well, I think if they switch from proof of work to proof of stake, they're going to lose their edge. The proof of stake is, I was talking to Obi, one is down at El Salvador, and he had a great take on it. He was like, once they switch over there, that mode is gone. And, whether it be Cardano or, whatever take a smart contract network, once it's all proof of stake, it's really just a race to the bottom in terms of fees. Because people don't care whether it's centralized or decentralized, just want it to work fast. And so now you're just talking, you could switch from network to network, and there's not a lot of moat around it. And then I like the way he was thinking in terms of you break out Bitcoin, it's proof of work, and you need to compare it to other proof of work networks. They're very, very different. And, I would think it's unfortunate to give up that mode. And now whether their layer 2 solution works and is able to be rolled out, it's we'll see if they can do it or not, and they might continue to survive. Of note, I've heard stuff where Lightning Network is effectively a smart contract network, because the smart contracts allow you to open channels and create invoices and what have you. You can see at some point in time where you may have tokens running across the Lightning Network. So if you can imagine Lightning Network being able to handle millions of transactions a second with very small fees, all native to Bitcoin, and people being able to issue tokens across them, you can certainly see that being an Ethereum killer. And any of these smart contract killers, it's because you can use Bitcoin as the hardest, the most native digital currency for the internet. And so we'll see how that plays out, but that's definitely a possibility. And I'm not trying to badmouth Ethereum. I think what they've done is incredible, but there's still challenges, and they're effectively working on a big network that's got a lot of things to solve, and it just takes time, right?
Move fast and break things, which is fine if you're doing apps or websites or something like that. But when you're looking at replacing, fiat currency, I'm all for Ethereum's innovation. And by the way, we've had smart contracts on Bitcoin since day zero. Bitcoin, essentially, every time you send a transaction is a smart contract. But
correct. Yeah, 100%. A lot of people don't get that, and that's really a key point. And the Ethereum just took it and made it Turing complete, so you can do more. They're trying to make it a more complete computerized experience, if you want to call it that. But I don't see Bitcoin as money. You can't roll the network back. You can't have, it has to be truly decentralized. Real it's got that weird, it just came out and got its own grassroots, and there's no real head to it. There's no one to, it really is like the internet, where it's just continued to morph and build, and it's hit its escape velocity. So.
Now, I have many questions. We could talk about Taproot and Metcalfe's law and all kinds of stuff, but two questions, one serious. With your Christmas video, where did you get your HODL on red wine?
Okay, that's special wine. So Janice is in charge of our media relations, stuff like that. So we're very fortunate. Up in Vancouver, we're very close to LA. They call Vancouver Hollywood North. There's a lot of films that get done here, a lot of Hollywood productions go up here. So there's tremendous amount of talent to do really high production. And we're blessed that we're signed up with a great company and a great team, and and right in the heart of it, that we were able to find people who could do a tremendous job. And so they put all together the props. They came up with a bunch of the idea, and I just kind of sat up there and did my thing. So Hodl Online doesn't exist. It's a label, but maybe someday.
You should have your liquid red wine or a liquid Merlot or something.
Liquid Merlot for sure. Absolutely. We've been asked about our jerseys. I've seen people saying, hey, we're going to buy the jersey. So we talked to the team this week and said, maybe we should put a little Lightning Network store up on our website. People can buy our jerseys if they want to pay over the Lightning Network. But we have a bunch of other priorities to get to before building out the jersey selling. But we'll look at that. But thank you for the feedback on the video. I hope you liked it.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, that's great. A lot of inside jokes. But I got them. That's fantastic. By the way, do people get confused? I know you're a multi-million-dollar company and whatnot, but do people get confused with Blockstream's Liquid?
I know, because we're so different on our logo. It's LQwD, and we call ourselves Liquid, but ultimately we are LQwD, and we're an LSP. So, I don't know the Blockstream guys. I've never really met them, but we get out in the ecosystem. There's actually quite a few companies that use the native Liquid in it, and a bunch of them are in crypto and Bitcoin and remittances. So that is not. I didn't want to use that name because I felt it was too generic. And from a branding and a marketing standpoint, we want people to say, hey, what's LQwD? Besides, LQwD is our Toronto Stock Exchange ticker. Right. That's our ticker symbol. So, you can say what you want, but take it up with the Toronto Stock Exchange. We like the ticker. It matches our company. And we call it Liquid for sake of but we're Liquid FinTech. So Liquid the network will do what it does.
I like your LSP though, like Internet Service Provider, Liquidity, or Lightning Service Provider. I mean, that's perfect. Explains exactly.
100%. Yeah, exactly.
Doing, I have two more questions, and I'll be really quick. One is, what is a certified cryptography investigator?
Oh, is that on my profile still?
It is.
So interesting. Yeah. So actually, my previous company, it's Blockchain Intelligence Group. It actually has a full course. It's been taken by a lot of law enforcement, a lot of regulators, and people who work in anti-money laundering for banks and institutions. And we actually teach them how to use products like Clue and BitRank, which are AML products for the crypto industry. That these institutions are required to use, and there's a whole course talking about dark web investigations, how to do it, and get down that. We've spent a lot of time in Washington D.C. With big. It's now under Big Digital Assets. It's also a public company that hit $1 billion market cap in the spring, and owns netcoins.ca, which is one of Canada's largest exchanges and fully regulated. So that's a product line within there. And since I was the executive chairman of that company, I felt I should probably take the company's course. I could do it in my sleep, of course. Just Clue and BitRank in my brainchild, but just wanted to have it there. And I don't know if I'll keep it on my profile for forever. I forgot if it was even on there, but
a lot of Bitcoiners might be upset with that, but regulation and that kind of stuff's unnecessary evil.
It's reality, right? I mean, sir, when I was maybe in my 20s, I'd be all upset about that and all passionate about it. But as you know, I'm in my 40s, and you want to change the world, but you have to. You're not going to bring Wall Street, you're not going to bring institutions, and you're not going to bring any. You're not going to bridge that initial gap. How do you get to a fully decentralized step? You have to go through the first step of how do you bring traditional finance into it and capital and what have you. So there are certain rules and regulations. And I think, Gordon, as we mentioned prior, no company in the public markets is going to accept Bitcoin if they can't have some kind of compliance software. And the reason is very simple: is that if they get fined for banking regulations, they get fined because they took Bitcoin and they didn't have reporting around it. The directors and the officers potentially put themselves up being personally liable to shareholder lawsuits. No director, officer of a company in their right mind's ever going to do that. And so you have to have that stuff for them to make that next step. Things will change over time here, and we'll continue to have a separation of church, state money. And that's exciting. But we have to do the pragmatic steps in between there, even if they're unpleasant or it doesn't fit our view of what we want the world to be. We have to work towards it.
Yeah, I'm all about being pragmatic, and that's why we're using Zoom, because centralized company and whatever, they still offer the best sort of podcast recording, and this is going to be public anyway; it's not private. So.
Yeah, they're great. So I mean, I agree. There's certain things that some things just do well, and central works better, and I mean, not decentralizing everything doesn't necessarily make sense, right?
Yeah, for most things, yeah, but for some things, and again, going back to that regulation, I mean, Ethereum. Again, another whole new topic is one phone call away from, Vitalik or the Ethereum Foundation. It's like, that's the beauty of Bitcoin that I see. The best thing that Satoshi did after they created Bitcoin was to quit and leave.
Yeah, it really is a unique story in itself. There's no central people to go after, and it is it's a true open architecture where nobody is at the helm, and it's a very rare thing to have, and it represents hard money and part of the future how trust will be done. So it's very exciting to see, and I'm very grateful to have been a part of it since 2012, and it's amazing to see how it's gone over the last 9 years of I guess started in 2011, so 10 years being aware of it, and it's the world's going to be changed over the next 10 years in a big way, and ultimately. I talk to bankers. So as part of my time with the Blockchain Intelligence Group and compliance stuff, we talked to bankers. I was in New York and I had a conversation with a bunch of bankers there, and there was about like 30 bankers in there. I can't remember the building, but it was a private event. And we asked them, what do you think your risk is with Bitcoin? What do you think your risk is? And they're like, well, it's all compliance software. We don't want to get fined, anti-money laundering and all these things. Like, no, companies like ours already solve that problem for you. Your risk right now is inaction. Because you don't understand that Bitcoin represents an extension and the trust layer of the internet. And you have to ask yourself how long it's going to be until Google and Facebook and Microsoft and Apple wake up and realize that they can get into banking. And now they have the perfect network to do it with. And with a Lightning network, they can do it at scale. And they have access to everybody's mobile phones. They have unlimited funds. They have unlimited funds. They have worldwide reach. And the most important thing that they have is they have armies of developers that are born and bred into a culture of disruption that are looking at Wall Street and the 600-year-old banking industry, and they want to turn it on its head. This is coming. Your fight right now, in the next 5 to 10 years, you'll be competing directly with Silicon Valley. And some of you guys are going to go under. Some of you guys are going to be, you're going to be the Sears of the day where, click and mortar and all that stuff. And then Amazon destroyed them. And some of you guys are going to be, go out and buy tech companies and stay in the race. Some of you guys are going to get it early. But ultimately, this is your fight. And just as the internet transformed a bunch of industries in the 90s and the 2000s, Bitcoin as an extension of the internet is going to transform finance. It's going to turn Wall Street on its head.
Oh, absolutely. And this is not blowing smoke, but you're doing the right thing by developing on open source. I mean, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, the argument was, should I use, Windows or this, or,
right.
or with databases, should I use Oracle? This open source has already won. It's not like there's still a debate about it. So yeah, right. Developing on open source, open standards, open architecture, open technology. That's why I love Linux, and people get sick of me saying that it's, open source money is Bitcoin, open source payments is Lightning.
100%. That is exactly right. And I learned my lessons early when I was, just before we were on the call, when I was 26, we were doing analytics stuff back in the 90s. We were building out search and all kinds of stuff for companies. And we decided to, instead of doing it on Perl, or an open source language. And we were looking at Perl. We had Perl developers at the time. We ended up using Microsoft C. Now, there's a place for Microsoft C, but back in the time, they had SDKs, or I can't remember what it was, but specifically, there was a bug in the language, and the language was closed source, so we couldn't fix it or find a fix for it. And after spending months of going down a certain path, we had a really big problem when we were forced to back it out, and it caused a huge issue. And that lesson was not lost on me. It was very painful. And this is why open source is where we want to be. So we're not beholden to a tech. Now it's important that Microsoft, these guys, they open source a lot of things now. They get it. Yeah. Because if they don't, you just leave them behind, because there's no reason to be beholden to any of these companies.
So last question.
Sorry, go ahead, Gord.
I was just going to say, very last question for me. I could go on and on asking you about Lightning or whatever. I'd love to have you back on the show, Shone, and we could maybe perhaps do a version 2 to see where Lightning's developing.
Sounds good.
But you can come back on the show, but you can't mention the word Perl, because that's just a trigger word for me.
It's a trigger word for you.
Last question from me. And a lot of people listening to this, they might have Bitcoin, they might not. and they've maybe even heard about Lightning, how could they get started? And I guess I'm talking about individuals here. How could they maybe play with the Lightning Network and sort of get their feet wet?
Yeah, if they're a little bit technical, I would look at Umbrel as a download. They can get Umbrel. They just Google that. If they don't know that and they want to do business to consumer, look at Voltage. And the guy Graham over at Voltage, they run a great thing there, so you can hit a button. I think they've got nodes that are $5 or $10, and you can spin it up. We ourselves are focused on strictly enterprise, and we're just B2B. We're just looking to exchanges and those kind of players. That's where we're putting our resources. So we're not a fit for that, but we're certainly those are areas we can get into very quickly. And then get yourself a wallet like Breez wallet. That's BREEZ or Z, depending which country you're from. And it's a great open source, non-custodial wallet. And there's a few others you can Google for certainly for Lightning Network wallets, but that's one that I use. And I have a personal relationship with Roy and the team over there. So I'm talking my own book, but ultimately I do love the product. And it's a good one to use. And it's a way to get in there and just start to, it was like at the early days of Bitcoin, when you first got into it, you almost had to break your teeth a little bit. You sort of had to suffer. But Lightning Networks are getting easier and easier where you don't have to suffer. It's getting much more streamlined where it's becoming that. But I've always encouraged people, if you like this space and you wanted to learn more about it, one of the best things you could do is actually, especially back in the day, but even now, get into some Bitcoin mining. Even if you're buying like a low-end miner or a home-based miner, I can't remember the company that does it. It's a Futurist but there's some low-end miners you can run at home that run under 200 watts. And even if you're not earning a lot of Bitcoin, you're going to be engaged. It's going to force you to understand Bitcoin mining pools and Bitcoin itself and hash rate and all kinds of amazing things that'll open your mind to what's possible. And certainly the same thing with Lightning Network. You can get into more of the guts of it if you want, or you can just simply use a basic wallet and you'll be experiencing just the surface level of it. But nothing like getting underneath it to really appreciate just how powerful it all is and where it's all going.
Sean, when you were talking earlier just about conventional banking, and it just made me think of the saying, first they ignore you, then they fight you, then they join you. And in the last 12 months, I've just been flabbergasted by just the snowball effect of so many new industries just jumping on and going, okay, we get Bitcoin now, let's get involved. So having said that, first of all, can you just plug yourself again? Just where can our listeners find you and what jurisdictions you operate in?
Absolutely. So we operate in anywhere because we're on the internet, but we're up in here, Vancouver, Canada. It's Liquid FinTech, LQwD. fintech.com. If you want to bring up our website, you can find us on Twitter under the same handle. Look, LQwD FinTech is our handle. You can look for myself. It's Shone Anstey, SHONE Anstey on Twitter. So you can find me there. And certainly we're happy to share any information we can to further the cause. And if you're interested in our public company, you can go to the Toronto Stock Exchange and type in LQwD and you'll find our ticker symbol. And our goal with the public markets, it's not about how much money we can put in our own pockets. It's about how we can tap the public markets to bring as much Bitcoin and capital market resources to the Lightning Network to propel it forward.
No, I've really enjoyed this, Sean. And I've said this to Gordon a lot. There's not often you come across someone who comes from a technical background that speaks English, where the rest of us can understand. And I think you do that incredibly well, where you're going through this intricate technological stuff. And our listeners, I know, will really appreciate it. And just on a side note, me and Gordon have done more than 150 episodes together. You think we'd learn how to not interrupt each other and talk over each other? We probably should work on a signal. I guess that's what happens when we miss a couple's counseling session.
It's been a real pleasure to have you on. It's been very, very, very professional, very smooth, and great questions. And happy to love to come back on in the future as we got more as our company continues to progress, the Lightning Network continues to progress. Keep an eye on us, and we're happy to share our thoughts on the space and where it's going.
No, we look forward to it. Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks again, Sean. And timely, as I said, last week we're discussing, micropayments with marginalized kids in South Africa. And now we're talking to you, providing liquidity for large enterprises. What an amazing space this is, not just with Bitcoin, but, all around it. It's absolutely fascinating.
It's mind-blowing. It's easy to get up in the morning, that's for sure.
Thanks again for your time.
Thank you, everyone. All right. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for watching or listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share so we can spread this educational content to others like yourself. Visit bitcoinbasics.help.
Disclaimer. Any content provided by CoinCompass is for educational and informational purposes only and is not investment, legal, tax, or any other professional advice. A qualified professional should be consulted before making any financial decisions. CoinCompass will at times recommend certain products, services, and technologies, but these are opinions based upon our own or podcast guests' experience and not endorsements. We take no liability for out-of-date or inaccurate information, software bugs, manufacturing errors, technology misuse, or issues involving third parties. Visit coincompass.com for more information and please contact us.